Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome to the Cowboys Beat Podcast for May 29th, 2024. And on today's episode, we're going to be talking about CeeDee Lamb and his contract and the update, some news coming forward for his contract. We're also going to be talking about the wide receiver 3 position for the Cowboys. And I also want to dive into some Sam Williams as well, talking about what I expect from him this upcoming season. But if you guys haven't already, please make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you guys haven't already. And so, funny story, I was at the Mavs game the other day. This was on Sunday, not last night. I was there on Sunday when they won versus the Timberwolves. I was going in the back of the line, right? And when I get to the back of the line, I'm just like looking around and I'm like, oh, cool. And then I see a guy who looks like Myles Garrett. I do a double take. I'm like, wait. That's actually Myles Garrett. So Myles Garrett was in the back of the line. I see him, I shake his hand, I'm like starstruck at this point. Because like, here's the thing. Like when it comes to celebrities, I can meet like some of the biggest rappers. I'd be like, oh yeah, that's pretty cool. Football players, it's completely different because I'm such a fan of the sport, especially a guy like Myles Garrett. He's one of my favorite players. And I shook his hand, I was like starstruck. I didn't get a picture with him, which sucked because he definitely would have taken a picture. He was a really cool guy. And I said to him, like, yeah, man, don't beat us too bad week 1, all right? And he's like, no promises. Oh man. I'm just joking. I don't think the Browns are going to beat us bad. Beat us bad week 1. I don't even think they're going to beat us. I think the Cowboys are going to win that game. I think the rosters are even, but I think the difference between the two rosters is the Cowboys have a better quarterback, and that's why I think they're going to win that game. But that's besides the point. We'll talk about that game when we get there. But yeah, without further ado, let's get into the episode. So let's get into the latest with CeeDee Lamb's contract. So there is news coming out from ESPN's Jeremy Fowler that CeeDee Lamb is likely waiting on Justin Jefferson to sign his extension before he ends up signing his. So this article is from Bleacher Report. If you guys want to go check it out, this is on Bleacher Report. Dallas Cowboys wide receiver CeeDee Lamb isn't in a hurry to sign a new contract, according to ESPN's Jeremy Fowler. Lamb and quarterback Dak Prescott are both in the last years of their deal. Fowler reported Sunday on SportsCenter that Prescott is believed to have priority in terms of an extension and that Lamb is, quote, okay with that because he's likely waiting on Justin Jefferson in Minnesota. The wideout market is already spiking with the Philadelphia Eagles, A.J. Brown and Detroit Lions, Amon-Ra St. Brown joining Miami Dolphins star Tyreek Hill and earning $30+ million annually. Signing right now would net Lamb a sizable payday, and you'd expect him to become the highest paid receiver since that's what happened with St. Brown and then Brown. So Amon-Ra St. Brown and then A.J. Brown. But Jefferson is bound to set a new standard whenever he agrees to a multi-year pact. Spotrac estimates his value to be $32.5 million per year, and that's probably a little conservative. The three-time Pro Bowler's impact might extend beyond his overall earnings too. Fowler reported in April he's emphasizing guarantees in his next contract. The nature of football incentivizes players to take the sure thing. Were Lamb to suffer a major injury in 2024, the kind of deal that's on the table now may not be there next spring. Lamb isn't the only notable receiver who's looking to see what Jefferson ultimately gets, though, and playing the waiting game could pay off in the long run. That article is from Bleacher Report. So here's the thing. The fact that the Cowboys are going to let CeeDee Lamb reset the market after Justin Jefferson is flat out ridiculous. Now, in the article, it says that they're prioritizing Dak's contract, which I get. I understand that. But you can work on 2 contracts at the same time. You can. And by the way, I'm not going to give the Cowboys a pass for this because they should have gotten these contracts done way earlier in the offseason. Way earlier in the offseason, they should have got these contracts done. But they've been doing this thing where they're waiting and they're trying to win the deal. Let me tell you this when it comes to the Cowboys wanting to win the deal. When you have special players on your roster, you're not going to win the deal. You have to overpay for them. That's just what happens. Okay? When somebody benefits you to the extent that some of these players that they're looking to extend can benefit you, it's worth it at the end of the day, right? It's like if you're dating a girl who has a lot of value, right? You have to treat her right. You have to buy her gifts. You have to text her good morning every morning, right? You have to treat her a certain type of way. You have to act a certain type of way because she brings something to your life that benefits you. That's the same way you have to look at these contracts. You have to overpay for CeeDee Lamb because he's a special player. player. You have to overpay for Dak Prescott because he's a special player. Second team All-Pro. Stop it, okay? Micah Parsons, he's a special player. You have to overpay for this guy. That's just the nature of the business. These guys are going to be critical pieces to whatever type of run you want to make in the near future. These are all guys that within the length of their contract, within the life of their contract, are going to be impact players. They're young enough, especially at their positions, because I know Dak's going to be 31, but he's playing the quarterback position, so it's a little different. They age a little differently than other positions. But when you look at Micah, 25, CeeDee Lamb, I think he's about to be 25. So if you sign these guys to 5-year deals, they're going to be playing at a very high level for the life of their contracts. Okay? You have to overpay for these guys. And guess what? Once you overpay for them and reset the market, you're good. You're done. Because at the same time, Jamar Chase is going to get extended next offseason. He's going to reset the market. There's going to be other guys that come and extend get extensions and reset the market. If you would have signed CeeDee Lamb last year to market resetting money, which would have been like, what, $27 million, we'd be looking at it this year with all the new contracts that are out there and saying, damn, we got CeeDee Lamb for a really good price. And if you're CeeDee Lamb, right, you got to look at your production. I don't blame him for wanting to wait for Justin Jefferson. Not one bit. Because if I'm CeeDee Lamb, I'm looking at my production. I'm like, dude, I was second in the league in yards this year. I put up almost as many yards as Tyreek Hill did. Now, I understand Tyreek Hill played 2 less games than CeeDee Lamb, or 1.5 less games, to be exact. I'm not 100% sure there. But you get what I'm saying. CeeDee Lamb was up there with, some of the very best receivers in football this past season. So he wants to be compensated like one of the best receivers in football. This is a guy that year after year has gotten better, has become more productive year after year. You build your offense around CeeDee Lamb. Like that's just what happens. He's a top 3 receiver in football. Right now, he is a top 3 receiver in football. CeeDee Lamb is. You can make the case, maybe you put Davante Adams in there. Okay, that's fine. There's nobody I'm putting over CeeDee Lamb other than Tyreek Hill and Justin Jefferson. If you want to put Davante Adams in there, that's fine, completely fine. But at the same time, CeeDee Lamb is a more valuable player right now because of his age. Teams would be more ready to extend a guy like CeeDee Lamb to a big contract than a guy like Davante Adams because of their age. That's what I mean by CeeDee Lamb being more valuable. So the Cowboys have to stop messing around here. And they've been doing this with these contract extensions. They want to win the deal. That's their thing. Guess what? You're not going to win the deal here. Tough. But guess what? You won the deal with Trayvon Diggs last year, and you got a really good deal out of the guy. Okay? There you go. Like, you got a good deal with Terrence Steele as well. You got a team-friendly contract there. Okay? You're going to win the deal with some of these guys, but you're not going to win it with these guys. You have to reset the market. You have to be comfortable doing that. Okay? You have all pro players. And this isn't one of those situations to where, like, Dak, I understand he's a first-time All-Pro, but he plays a position where there's only 2 All-Pro selections at that position, and for a majority of his career, he was playing in the, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees era, so it was kind of difficult to make All-Pro teams during that era because of the quality of quarterback that's there. Now, don't get it twisted. There's still quality quarterbacks in the game, but, Dak's one of those guys that you look at as a top-of-the-league type of quarterback, right? So, yeah, he only has 1 All-Pro, but, CeeDee Lamb, multi-time All-Pro. Micah Parsons, multi-time All-Pro. It's just, it is what it is, okay? You're going to lose this one. And the quicker you get it done, the worse, or the quicker you get it done, the worse it's going to look in a year from now. And that's just the case with these contracts. But like, I don't want to go back a year from now and say, man, we could have got CeeDee Lamb at like $27 million 2 years ago instead of $34 million or $35 million a year later. Like right there, like, and that's kind of what pisses me off when people say like, oh, Doc, you should take a pay cut. CeeDee, you should take a pay. These guys should take a pay cut. Like, no, this team needs to sign their players way before they sign them, right? Because don't tell Dak, hey, you should take a pay cut. You should take a $5 million pay cut. Why? The team could have done that. If they would have signed me last offseason, I would have been getting paid $52, $53 million, but they didn't sign me last offseason. Like, if they would have overpaid for him last season, maybe they reset the market by a couple $1 million. Okay, and I think the market last year was 55. I think Burrow ended up with 55, but he was like the last quarterback to get signed. Like if they would have extended Dak right after that playoff game and said, hey, look, here's $50 million. Hey, you want to know what? Here's $53 million. Now, that's the pay cut that the fans are talking about. Like, I want people to understand this. Stop telling these players they need to take a pay cut. Stop. Because they're getting dragged through the mud with these damn negotiations. The team needs to be better with these contracts. Stop taking accountability away from the front office. They need to be better with these contracts. Okay? And when we talk about, oh, Dak should take a pay cut, he should take $55 million or $50 million. Okay, you're getting a backup quarterback and like another linebacker with that money. You're not getting difference makers with $10 million. It's like the only way you're going to see a real difference in the quality of players you're able to add to your rosters if Dak were to take a $20 million pay cut. And by no means should he do that. I'm not advocating for that whatsoever. I'm not even advocating that he should take a pay cut. Because again, this front office needs to be better with the way they handle their negotiations. They're getting pantsed at the negotiation table, and agents understand they can pants this team at the negotiation table because they understand that at the end of the day, they're gonna cave at the end of the day, and the agents are gonna get the contract for their clients that they ultimately want. That's just what happens there. So, the Cowboys, they're really hurting themselves with waiting for these negotiations, and they need to stop playing around and get these things done ASAP. All right, I want to talk about the wide receiver 3 position for the Cowboys and some names that I think could potentially fill that role for the Cowboys this year, and why ultimately I don't really think it matters that much. So right now, it looks like Jalen Tolbert is going to be the wide receiver 3 for the Cowboys this upcoming season. Last year it was Michael Gallup. I think that, addition by subtraction is a real thing in the NFL. And with the level of play that Michael Gallup was giving you, with the fact that he was getting paid a lot of money, so the front office wants guys that they pay a lot of money to be on the field and to get targets. It's just the way things are in football. I don't like it, but it's just the way it is. I think that you take Michael Gallup off this team, you give Jalen Tolbert, who I think honestly was a better player than Michael Gallup last year, more opportunities. I think that you are going to be better at the wide receiver 3 spot. And on top of the fact that there are some guys that can potentially fill that role that are a bit younger, that have some potential, right? There's guys like Jalen Brooks, who it felt like every single time this guy got an opportunity, he made the most of it. There is some good stuff coming out about Ryan Flournoy, the receiver that they just drafted in the 6th round, guy that has all the traits in the world. Jalen Cropper is another guy that I'm hearing good things about coming out of OTAs. Kevontae Turpin is another guy. So they definitely have some options there at that position. So I want to go over, last year Michael Gallup was the wide receiver 3. He got 57 targets. Jalen Tolbert was the wide receiver 4. He got 36 targets. I think that if you were to increase the target rate for Jalen Tolbert, let's just say to 60 targets or something along those lines, I think that you're going to see a more productive season from Jalen Tolbert. I like his game a lot. It feels like he's a very reliable receiver. He made some big plays in some games, right? Made a big play in the Miami game, made some big plays in the Philadelphia game. He was very reliable that game. So much so that I think it was a 4th down. James Bradbury was covering Jalen Tolbert. Dak said, I'm gonna trust my guy here because he's been making plays for him all game. He was very reliable for him that game. There was the play that he made downfield on the scramble drill, I believe it was, and then there was a touchdown pass that he caught. So I want to see more of Jalen Tolbert. Brandon Cooks came out and said, whatever the expectation is for Jalen Tolbert this upcoming season, I think he's going to crush those expectations. So, Mike McCarthy's saying some good stuff about Jalen Tolbert. I think you're going to see a better season from him than last season. And I don't even think that's a hot take. Last season he had 22 receptions, 268 yards, and 2 touchdowns. It was an improvement from the year prior. You want to see more from him, no doubt about it. No doubt about that. You want to see more from him. But heading in the right direction, can he get you 600 yards this year? I think if you increase the opportunities that he's going to get, I think he can do that for you. And ultimately, I talked about earlier why it might not even matter, because when you look at the top guys on this team, the top receivers, not just talking about wide receivers, just talking about the receivers in general. To me, it goes CeeDee, Jake Ferguson, Brandon Cooks. Those are your three main targets, right? And the wide receiver 3 position becomes less important if you have a really solid tight end. And the Cowboys have a really solid tight end who I think is going to be even better than he was last year and could potentially be top 5 at his position this upcoming season, if he's not top 5 already. I'd have to go through the tight ends to do that, and I'm not going to do that right now. But that's why ultimately the wide receiver 3 spot isn't going to matter that much. But, in that position, I would like to get like a true X type of receiver, right? And I think that Jalen Tolbert can play that role. I think Ryan Flournoy can play that role. Kavontae Turpin and Jalen Moreno-Cropper, I don't think they can. Jalen Brooks potentially can. So it's going to be very interesting to see what goes down at training camp. I think that role is meant for Jalen Tolbert, wide receiver 3. And then wide receiver 4, it's going to be, a battle up there at camp for who could potentially play that role on this team. Again, when you have the type of guys like CeeDee Lamb and Jake Ferguson are going to command as many targets as they're going to command, I think that the wide receiver 3 and wide receiver 4 spots are far less important than they would be on a team, let's just say, that doesn't have a tight end. This is a team that struggled to get Brandon Cooks targets last season for, a good portion of the season. And if I'm Mike McCarthy, one thing I do this upcoming offseason is, how do I get Brandon Cooks more involved in this offense, right? How do we make that happen? I look at that game that he had against the Giants. If I'm Mike McCarthy and I'm saying, whatever I did that game, let's do that with Brandon Cooks, because he went crazy that game. And, I know there's going to be people that say, oh, well, it was just the Giants, man. They had Tommy DeVito that game. Okay, well, the Giants with Tommy DeVito also beat Green Bay, who went into your building and panched you in the playoffs. Okay, so, they were at least somewhat formidable. They were a somewhat formidable opponent that Brandon Cooks just went off against. So if I'm Mike McCarthy, I'm looking at, how do I get Brandon Cooks more involved? Because if you can do that, that's going to unlock this offense. Because I thought Brandon Cooks was a good contributor last year. I want to see more production from him. I think he's capable of more production, but I do think some of this has to do with how are we going to scheme things up for Brandon Cooks, right? So the wide receiver 3 spot as a whole, again, I'm going to say it, it's not as important as people may think. And if you're panicking about like, oh, are we going to have a legit guy in that spot? I think you're going to have like a legit wide receiver 3 in Jalen Tolbert. Is he like a Tyler Boyd type from Cincinnati, even though Tyler Boyd plays more slot? Are you going to get the type of production that you're going to get from like him, let's just say? No. Are you going to get the type of production that you got from Michael Gallup when he was a wide receiver 3? Probably not. And wide receiver 3, and when I mean Michael Gallup, I mean before the ACL injury. You're probably not going to get that, okay? But I don't think you need that because of the quality of players that you have with your first, second, and third options with CeeDee Lamb, Jake Ferguson, and Brandon Cooks. So that's where I stand on that. That's going to be one of the most interesting camp battles this upcoming training camp. So I'm looking forward to seeing it. So for the last topic for today's show, I want to talk about a guy who needs to step up, and that is Sam Williams. Look, here's the thing. Sam Williams, to me, has all the potential in the world. Sam Williams has all pro potential. That's the type of talent that he possesses. But he needs to get better with between the ears type of stuff when it comes to playing the game of football. If I'm Sam Williams, I'm hip to hip with Mike Zimmer this offseason. If he follows what Zimmer is coaching him and Jeff Zanina and Greg Ellis are going to be coaching him this offseason, he's going to have a tremendous season this year. He's going to be able to get 10 plus sacks this upcoming season while also being able to be impactful against the run. He's a more talented player than Randy Gregory was. And I had a lot of respect for the type of player Randy Gregory was. He has the potential to be a better run defender than Randy Gregory. What Sam Williams is everything you want out of a defensive end. He's fast, he's strong, he's physical as hell. If he can get it together between the ears when it comes to being a player, this guy has the potential to be an all-pro. I've seen Mike Zimmer take less talented players and turn them into high-level players. Look at a guy like Danielle Hunter, per se, who has some of the same traits that a guy like Sam Williams has. I think that Sam Williams has better traits than Danielle Hunter has. I really believe that. That's how much respect I have for what Sam Williams brings to the table. And if I'm Mike Zimmer, one of the things that I'm hammering home this offseason, how do we get the most out of Sam Williams? When I'm looking at the players on this roster, who has the highest ceiling that hasn't been tapped into? And the blinking red light is Sam Williams. That's me personally, my opinion. I think the guy with the highest upside outside of guys like, Trayvon Diggs and Micah Parsons and guys like that, Sam Williams is very high on that list. Dan Quinn, I don't really think did Sam Williams a lot of favors, because Dan Quinn's defenses play at 110 miles an hour. All right, if you get a penalty, it is what it is. Go get me a sack. Go make it up for me on the back end. Go make a play, and we'll be good. That's the type of defense that Dan Quinn, put forward for the Cowboys. They were a team that relied on turnovers and sacks where, Mike Zimmer is more, hey, let's focus on negative plays and let's get teams off the field, 3 and out, 6 play drives for the opposing offense and you force a punt. That's the type of stuff that Mike Zimmer wants to hammer home. Disciplined football. And if Sam Williams can become a more disciplined football player, he has all the potential in the world. He can be a top flight player in this league. He could be a top flight pass rusher. He could be a guy that we could potentially be talking about a year from now that we're saying, hey, the Cowboys really need to consider paying this guy big money and getting out in front of it soon because, the best is yet to come from him. And I truly do believe that. His rookie season, he had 10 tackles for loss. That's incredible. You've seen him have really good reps against some of the best offensive linemen in the league. He got a sack on Penei Sewell. PFF, for some reason, doesn't credit Sam Williams for his sack on Penei Sewell, even though obviously they credited him for the sack, but he got it on Penei Sewell. Penei Sewell engaged with Sam Williams. That was his assignment, and Sam Williams beat him. He beat Jordan Mailata and ended up forcing a fumble against Jalen Hurts. He beat the kid from Green Bay, Elton Jenkins, I believe his name is. He's a very solid guard for the Packers. He was playing, I think it was a 4-eye, and he smoked the hell out of this guy. And these aren't coverage sacks either. Like, he's beating these guys in under 3 seconds and forcing havoc in the backfield. That's the type of player that Sam Williams is. I need this coaching staff to get the most out of him. And if it comes to the point where it's like, no, this is a player thing. This is not a coach's thing. This is a player's thing. Okay, I can live with the Cowboys taking a risk on a player with that level of potential and saying, hey, coaches, do your job. And, it could come to the point where the coaches say, we tried. We really did try with this guy, and he's not giving us what we need out of this particular player. And when you talk about the importance of Sam Williams, you lost some depth on the defensive line when it comes to Dorrance Armstrong and Dante Fowler. Now, granted, they did not fit in Mike Zimmer's system. They were not going to be players that, Mike Zimmer really relied upon because, again, they're not fits in the system. So, look, the Cowboys have some defensive ends that could cause Sam Williams some big problems. Marshawn Nealon is a guy to look out for. Junior Fehoko, I think, is actually a perfect fit for Zimmer's system as a defensive end. Bigger, stronger type of defensive end. That's what Zimmer prefers. So, Sam Williams has to step up this upcoming season. And if he does, and if Zimmer gets the most out of him, that could potentially be a big time difference maker. And when you talk about a team that doesn't go out there and make moves in free agency, the reason why is because they rely on Sam Williams to take a jump, like a guy like Sam Williams, to take a jump. They look at these young players and they say, hey, we need you to step up this upcoming season because we don't want to go out there and spend a bunch of money in free agency. We're relying on you guys. And look, over the past few seasons, it's worked, right? A few years ago, the Cowboys lost more players in 2022 than they did this season. They lost Amari Cooper. They lost Randy Gregory. They lost La'el Collins. They lost all these guys. Cedric Wilson. You can go down the line. They lost more guys in 22 than they did in 24. And they were a better team than the year prior because it was kind of like they just coached better that year. The defense played at a higher level. They were more comfortable as a unit, So all these things considered, taking all these things into consideration, guys like Sam Williams need to step up. And if they do, this strategy that the Cowboys have, where they're just like, hey, we're going to rely on our young players taking that next leap as to how we're going to become better as a team, they'll look very smart in that particular situation. But, he's one of the guys that fans have to look at and say, hey, we need more from you. And the coaches and the front office, they got to look at this guy and they say, hey, we need more from you. I truly believe that he has all pro potential. He just has to tap into it. Not only him, but the coaches also have to tap into it as well. So that's going to be it for the episode. If you guys haven't already, please make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. The support for the channel has been amazing. You guys have been awesome. I really do appreciate all the engagement you guys have been putting forward to the channel. So yeah, let's keep this thing going. And season is few months away. We're going to be in training camp before we know it, preseason before we know it. It's going to be a lot of fun. So please make sure to hit that subscribe button to stay up to date with all the content. And yeah, I'm looking forward to what's in store for the channel, and I'll talk to you guys later.